Ooh, chapter 12 at night. Primarily because it took so long to upload chapter 11 and YouTube's being annoying. But we're going to read chapter 12 because I said I would read 2. You might not read it till tomorrow or see it till tomorrow, but hey, I'm still going to post it. Okay. Chapter 12, Strawberry's Adventure. Diggory kept his mouth very tight shut. He had been growing more and more uncomfortable. He hoped that, whatever happened, he wouldn't blub or do anything ridiculous. Son of Adam, said Aslan, are you ready to undo the wrong that you have done to my sweet country of Narnia on the very day of its birth? Well, I don't see what I can do, said Diggory. You see, the queen ran away, and I asked if you were ready, said the lion. Yes, said Diggory. He had for a second some wild idea of saying, I'll try to help you if you'll promise to help my mother, but then he realized in time that the lion was not at all the sort of person he could try to make bargains with. But when he said yes, he thought of his mother, and he thought of the great hopes he had, and how they were all dying away, and a lump came to his throat, and tears came to his eyes, and he blurted out, But please, won't you help? Can't you give me something that will cure my mother? Up till then, he had been looking at the lion's great feet and the huge claws on them. Now, in his despair, he looked up at his face. What he saw surprised him as much as anything in his whole life, for the tawny face bent down near his own, and, wonder of wonders, great shining tears stood in the lion's eyes. They were such big, bright tears compared to Diggory's own that for a moment he felt as if the lion must really be sorrier about his mother than he was himself. My son, said Aslan, I know. Grief is great. Only you and I in this land know that yet. Let us be good to one another. But I have to think of hundreds of years in the life of Narnia. The witch whom you have brought into this world will come back to Narnia again, but it need not be yet. It is my wish to plant in Narnia a tree that she will not dare approach for many years, and this tree will protect Narnia from her. So this land shall have a long, bright morning before any clouds come over the sun. You must get me the seed from which that tree is to grow. Yes, sir, said Diggory. He didn't know how it was to be done, and he felt quite sure now that he would be able to do it. The lion drew a deep breath, stooped its head even lower, and gave him a lion's kiss. And at once Diggory felt new strength and courage had come to him. Dear son, said Aslan, I will tell you what you must do. Turn and look to the west, and tell me, what do you see? I see terribly big mountains, Aslan, said Diggory. I see this river coming down cliffs in a waterfall, and beyond the cliff there were high green hills with forests, and beyond those are higher ranges that look almost black, and then far away there's big snowy mountains all heaped together like pictures of the Alps, and behind those there's nothing but sky. You see well, said the lion. Now the land of Narnia ends where the waterfall comes down, and once you have reached the top of the cliffs you will be out of Narnia and into the western wild. You must journey through those mountains till you find a green valley with a blue lake in it, walled around by mountains of ice. At the end of the lake there is a steep green hill. On the top of that hill there is a garden. In the center of that garden is a tree. Pluck an apple from the tree and bring it back to me. Yes, sir, said Diggory again. He hadn't the least idea of how he was going to climb a cliff and find his way among the mountains, but he didn't like to say that for fear it would sound like making excuses. But he did say, I hope, Aslan, you're not in a hurry. I shan't be able to get there and back very quickly. Little son of Adam, you shall have help, said Aslan. He turned to the horse who had been standing quietly beside them all this time, swishing his tail to keep the flies off and listening with his head on one side as if the conversation were a bit difficult to understand. My dear, said Aslan to the horse, would you like to be a winged horse? You should have seen how the horse shook its mane and how its nostrils widened and the little tap it gave on the ground with one back hoof. Clearly it would very much like to be a winged horse, but it only said, If you wish, Aslan, if you really mean, I don't know why it should be me. I'm not a very clever horse. Be winged. Be the father of all flying horses, roared Aslan in a voice that shook the ground. Your name is Fledge. The horse shade as it might have shade in the old, miserable days when it was pulled when it pulled a hansom. Remember those cart buggy thingies with like the thing behind them that carried people? Then it roared. It strained its neck back as if there was a fly biting its shoulders, and it wanted to scratch them. And then, just as the beast had burst out of the earth, there was a burst out from the shoulders of Fledge's wings that spread and grew larger than eagles, larger than swans, larger than angels in church windows. The feathers shone chestnut color and copper color. He gave them a sweep, and with them leaped into the air. 20 feet above Aslan and Diggory, he snorted, neighed, and curveted. Then, after circling once around them, he dropped to the earth, all 4 hoofs together, looking awkwardly surprised but extremely pleased. "Is it good, Fledge?" said Aslan. "It's very good, Aslan," said Fledge. "Will you carry this little son of Adam on your back to the mountain valley I spoke of?" I'll pause. Just the pictures. So you see Fledge, previously known as Strawberry. And he gets wings. Love it. "What, now, at once?" said Strawberry, or Fledge, as we must now call him. "Hurrah! Come on, little one. I've had things like you on my back before, long, long ago, when there were green fields and sugar." "What are the 2 daughters of Eve whispering about?" said Aslan, turning very suddenly to Polly and the cabbie's wife, who had been in fact making friends. "If you please, sir," said Queen Helen, for that is what Nellie the cabman's wife now was, "I think the little girl would love to go too, if it were not too much trouble." What does Fledge say about that?" asked the lion. "Oh, I don't mind too, not when they're little ones," said Fledge, "but I hope that the elephant doesn't want to come as well." The elephant had no such wish, and the new king of Narnia helped both of the children up. That is, he gave Diggory a rough heave and set Polly as gently and daintily on the horse's back as if she were made of china and might break. "There they are. Fledge, I should say. This is a rum go." "Don't fly too high," said Aslan. "Do not try to go over the tops of the great ice mountains. Look out for the valleys, the green places, and fly through them. There will always be a way through. And now, be gone with my blessing." "Oh, Fledge," said Diggory, leaning forward to pat the horse's glossy neck. "This is fun. Hold on to me tight, Polly." Next moment, the country dropped away beneath them and whirled around as Fledge, like a huge pigeon, circled once or twice before setting off on his long westward flight. Looking down, Polly could hardly see the king and the queen, and even Aslan himself was only a bright yellow spot on the green grass. Soon the wind was in their faces, and Fledge's wings settled down to a steady beat. All Narnia, many-colored, with lawns and rocks, heather and different sorts of trees, lay spread out below them, the river winding through it like a ribbon of quicksilver. They could already see over the tops of the low hills which lay northward on their right. Beyond those hills, a great moorland sloped gently up the horizon. On their left, the mountains were much higher. But every now and then there was a gap where you could see between the steep pine woods a glimpse of the southern lands that lay beyond them, looking blue and far away. "That'll be where Archland is," said Polly. "But look ahead," said Diggory. For now the great barrier of cliffs rose before them, and they were almost dazzled by the sunlight dancing on the great waterfall by which the rivers roar and the sparkles down into Narnia itself, from the high western lands from which it rises. They were flying so high already that the thunder of those falls could only just be heard as a small, thin sound, but they were not yet high enough to fly over the tops of the cliffs. "We'll have to do a bit of a zigzag here," said Fledge. "Hold on tight." He began flying to and fro, getting higher each turn, and the air grew colder, and they heard the call of eagles below them. "I say, look back, look behind," said Polly. There they could see the whole valley of Narnia stretched out to where just before the eastern horizon there was a gleam of the sea. And now they were so high that they could see tiny-looking jagged mountains appearing beyond the northwest moors, and plains of what looked like sand from far south. "I wish we had someone to tell us what all those places were," said Diggory. "I don't suppose they're anywhere yet," said Polly. "I mean, there's no one there, nothing happening. The world only began today." "No, but people will get there," said Diggory, "and then they'll have histories, you know." "Well, it's a jolly good thing they haven't now, because nobody can be made to learn it. Battles and dates and all that rot." Now they were over the tops of the cliffs in a few minutes, and the valley land of Narnia had sunk out of sight behind them. Another picture. This time you can see both Polly and Diggory on Fledge, and you can see all the landscape below. Pretty cool. They were flying over the wild country of steep hills and dark forests, still following the course of the river. The really big mountains loomed ahead, but the sun was now the traveler's eye, and they couldn't see things very clearly in that direction, for the sun sank lower and lower till the western sky was all like one great furnace full of melted gold, and it set last behind a jagged peak, which stood up against the brightness as sharp and flat as if it were cut out of cardboard. "It's none too warm up here," said Polly. "And my wings are beginning to ache," said Fledge. "There's no sign of the valley with the lake in it, that's like Aslan said. What about coming down and looking for a decent spot to spend the nights in? We shan't reach the place tonight." "Yes, and surely it's about time for supper," said Diggory. So Fledge came lower and lower. As they came down nearer to the earth among the hills, the air grew warmer, and after traveling so many hours with nothing to listen to but the beat of Fledge's wings, it was nice to hear the homely and earthly noises again, the chatter of the river on its stony bed and the creaking of trees in the light wind. A warm, good smell of sun-baked earth and grass and flowers came up to them. At last Fledge alightened. Diggory rolled off and helped Polly to dismount. Both were glad to stretch their stiff legs. The valley in which they had come down was in the heart of the mountains, snowy heights, one of them looking rose-red in the reflections of the sunset that towered above them. "I am hungry," said Diggory. "Well, tuck in," said Fledge, taking a big mouthful of grass. Then he raised his head, still chewing, with bits of grass sticking out of each side of his mouth like whiskers, and said, "Come on, you two, don't be shy. There's plenty for all of us." "But we can't eat grass," said Diggory. Said Fledge, speaking with his mouth full. "Well, don't know what quite well to do then. Very good grass, too." Polly and Diggory stared at one another in dismay. "Well, I do think someone might have arranged about our meals," said Diggory. "I'm sure Aslan would have if you'd asked him," said Fledge. "Wouldn't he know without being asked?" said Polly. "I doubt he would," said the horse, still with his mouth full, "but I've a sort of idea he likes to be asked." "But what on earth are we to do?" said Diggory. "I'm sure I don't know," said Fledge, "unless you try the grass. You might like it better than you think." "Oh, don't be silly," said Polly, stamping her foot. "Of course humans can't eat grass any more than you could eat mutton chop." "For goodness sake, don't talk about chops and things," said Diggory. "It only makes it worse." Diggory said that Polly had better take herself home by Ring and get something to eat there. He couldn't himself because he had promised to go straight on for his message for Aslan. And if once he showed up again at home, anything might happen to prevent him from getting back. But Polly said she wouldn't leave him, and Diggory said it was jolly decent of her. "I say," said Polly, "I've still got remains of that bag of toffee in my jacket. It'll be better than nothing." "A lot better," said Diggory, "but be careful to get your hand in your pocket without touching your ring." This was a difficult and delicate job, but they managed in the end. The little paper bag was very squashy and sticky, and they finally got it out, and it was more of a question of tearing the bag off the toffees than getting the toffees out of the bag. Some grown-ups, you know how fussy they can get about this sort of thing, would rather have gone without supper altogether than eaten those toffees. There was 9 of them total. It was Diggory who had the bright idea of eating 4 each and planting the 9th. For, as he said, if the bar off the lamppost turned into a little light tree, why shouldn't this turn into a toffee tree? So they dibbled a small hole in the turf and buried the piece of toffee. Then they ate the other pieces, making them last as long as they could. It was a poor meal, even with all the paper they couldn't help but eating as well. When Fledge had finished his own excellent supper, he laid down. The children came and sat one on each side of him, leaning against his warm body, and when he had spread his wings over each of them, they were really quite snug. As the bright young stars of the new world came out and they talked over everything. How Diggory had hoped to get something for his mother, and how instead of that he had sent out this message, and that they repeated to one another all the signs which they should know the places they were looking for, the blue lake and the hill with the garden on top of it. The talk was just beginning to slow down as they got sleepy, and suddenly Polly sat up, wide awake, and said, "Hush!" I'm going to pause real quick and look picture. So you can see under his wing is Diggory sleeping or trying to sleep. Kind of cool. I don't know why my camera's doing all different colors. Okay. She said, "Hush!" Everyone listened as hard as they could. That was weird timing because my light just went off. Hold on. That was so funny. Okay, we got the light back on. That was good timing, wasn't it? That was funny. Perhaps it was only the wind in the trees, said Diggory presently. I'm not so sure, said Fledge. Anyway, wait, there it goes again. By Azan, it is something. The horse scrambled to its feet with a great noise and a great upheaval. The children were already on theirs. Fledge trotted to and fro, sniffing and whinnying. The children tiptoed this way and that, looking behind every bush and tree. They kept thinking they saw things, and there was a time where Polly was perfectly certain she had seen a tall, dark figure gliding quickly away in the westerly direction. But they caught nothing. They caught nothing in the end. Fledge lay down again, and the children re-snuggled, if that's the right word, under his wings. They went to sleep at once. Fledge stayed awake much longer, moving his ears to and fro in the darkness, and sometimes giving a little shiver with his skin as if a fly had landed lightly on him. But in the end, he slept too. That was the end of chapter 12. We have chapter 13, An Unexpected Meeting, which we will read tomorrow. Well, technically, I'm going to read it tonight, and then I'm going to post it tomorrow, but I'm still going to read it either way tomorrow. Okay. Love and support you. Bye.